Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah wa alhamdulillah. So today, inshallah, we're going to be talking about pronouns. So pronouns in Arabic language, like in many languages, can be a bit difficult sometimes to understand because they require memorization, which is always something that's a bit challenging, especially for us who come from a Western, mostly education, where memorization is not very emphasized. But inshallah, I'll break it down as fairly simple as I can in this video, in two videos. So the first videos, um, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah. So, inshallah, in this video today, we're going to be talking about pronouns. So, before we go into pronouns, there's a few things you need to understand. First and foremost, pronouns in general in any language, pronouns can be a bit difficult to understand at first, just because they require memorization, and sometimes certain languages they can have more pronouns than others because they can be more specific. Like for example, in French we have a bit more pronouns than in English. Um, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد ومن تبعهم بإحسان يوم الدين. Alhamdulillah, in this video we're going to be talking about pronouns. So starting off, pronouns, first and foremost, can be a bit difficult in any language, just because sometimes we can't always do positive transfer in the sense that certain languages, they have more pronouns than others. For example, French has more pronouns than English. The Arabic language also has more pronouns than English. So it's sometimes some of these concepts you can't directly transfer a piece of grammar or a piece of information that you learn in English into this other language and find the equivalent of that thing because there's no equivalent. And that is the case in the Arabic language when it comes to someone coming from an English background or even a French background. And also, second of all, pronouns require you to memorize, right? To learn pronouns in the Arabic language, you have to memorize, and there's no other way. So, inshallah, for this video, I'm going to try to break it down as simple as I can, and inshallah, it'll be quite easy. So first and foremost, before we actually go into details on pronouns, we need to understand that pronouns in the Arabic language can be either muttasilun or munfasilun. Muttasilun means attached, munfasilun means detached. So the reason why it's important to understand, because when the pronoun is munfasilun, for example, detached, like huwa, he, it, so depending on the context, huwa can mean he or can mean it. So if it's referring to something that's rational, something that has an intellect, it's going to mean he, like a person. But if it's referring to a car or to a book, or a car is more a better, a book's a better example, then it's going to mean it. So huwa ala al-maktab, it is on the desk, for example. You need the book. Anyhow, so huwa, when it's munfasil, when it is attached, it has its own specific form and has a specific way of being said, which is huwa. But when huwa becomes muttasil, it becomes attached, it changes its form, and the way that we say it is a bit different. So kitabuhu means his book. It's the attached form of huwa. So as you can see here, based on whether the pronoun is munfasilun or muttasilun, is going to determine how we're going to say it and how we're going to pronounce it and how we're going to write it. So that's what, before we even start talking about pronouns in details, we need to understand this. So in this video, we're going to be attacking or explaining the concept of pronouns from the munfasilun perspective. So we're going to talk about the detached pronouns, how they look like when they're detached, and how they're said when they're detached, and their meanings. Okay. In another video, inshallah, we're going to talk about the muttasil versions of those munfasil pronouns. So first and foremost, the de facto position is that it be munfasil. So normally a pronoun is going to come on its own because a pronoun doesn't need anything else, but sometimes it can be attached, and that's something we're going to cover in another video. So now let's talk about the detached pronouns. Al-Dama'ir and Munfasila. So Dama'ir is a plural of Damir, pronouns. Munfasila, detached, the detached pronouns. So this board right here, or this graph if you will, it breaks down to you all the pronouns in the Arabic language and how they're used and their meaning. So it's actually a very, very, alhamdulillah, it's actually a very good graph. So I recommend that someone would memorize this and understand it. Memorize this, understand it, or even better yet, you can write it again, rewrite it in your notes or whatever the case may be. So I'll teach you how to actually read the pronoun and how to actually read the graph and briefly go over it. So first and foremost, you start off from the left side. So you have person, gender, singular, dual, plural. So the person, you have three different persons. The third person, which is they, he, so on and so forth. She. Well, the second person is al-mukhatab in the Arabic language, which means the second person. So you, that's pretty much all we have in the English language. And then al-mutakallim, which is the first person, so I and we. Okay, so al-ghaib comes to the word ghaib, which means absent. So the person is absent, the person is unseen, the person is not there, so you're referring to him in the third person. Okay. And then when you go down, obviously you're attacking or you're discussing those pronouns that go back to those persons. Then you have the gender. Of course, we only have two genders, masculine and feminine. That's found in only two. So in the first person, we don't distinguish between feminine and masculine. There's just one version, so it makes things a lot easier. Then, of course, in the Arabic language, we have three different numbers: the singular, the dual, and the plural. So unlike the English language, where we don't have any dual, we do have it in the Arabic language. And then when you go right, obviously it explains that in that sense. So now let's go on and start with al-ghaib. Al-ghaib is the third person, so she, they, and so on and so forth. We have masculine and we have masculine and feminine. So the singular masculine third person is huwa, which can mean he or it depending on the context, as I just mentioned. Now, what's the feminine version of huwa? It's hiya, she, it. We also have this in the English language, which makes things a lot easier. But the thing that we don't have is that he or huwa or hiya, it has to also be the right gender depending on the inanimate thing you're referring to. What I mean by that is that in the English language, when we say he, we're always referring to something that has life, right? When we say she, we're always referring to something that has intellect, that has rationality, but not in the Arabic language. So in the Arabic language, if I'm referring to something like a sayaratun has a tam marbuta, so I'm going to use hiya when I'm referring to sayaratun, shajaratun also, and so on and so forth. The dual forms are the same, which makes things a lot easier, but there's no positive transfer for this concept from the English language. So day two is huma, and also day two is huma. Obviously, this is just an approximate translation because there's no exact equivalent to huma in the English language or even the French language. The plural hum and hunna, of course, again, there's no equivalent to this in the English language. So hum means they masculine, right? While hunna means they feminine. So if I'm referring to a group of guys, I'm going to say they were in the masjid or they're in the masjid. I'm going to say hum fil masjid. But if I'm referring to a group of sisters, I'm going to say hunna fil masjid. Okay, so as always, in the Arabic language, it can be a lot more specific. Alhamdulillah, that finishes out all the ghaib, all the pronouns that are third person. Let's go on to the second person, and mukhatab. Mukhatab comes from yani khatib or mukhataba and so on and so forth, which means any conversation or speaking, right? So you're speaking to someone else, you speak to someone in front of you, right? Gender, masculine, feminine again. Anta is you, masculine. Feminine version is anti. No equivalent to this in the English language, but in the Arabic language, we have to first. So if I'm speaking to Muhammad, I'm going to say anta. If I'm speaking to Aisha, I'm going to say anti. Antuma, antuma. So the dual, it never distinguishes. As you can see here, when it comes to the dual, we don't distinguish between the genders, okay? And then the plurals is a bit different, of course. Antum and antunna. Antum, you male. So I'm speaking to a group of girls, I'm going to say antum fil masjid. I'm speaking to a group of girls, I'm going to say antunna fil masjid. Okay, and again, no equivalent to this in the English language. So that goes over all al-mukhatab, all the second person pronouns. And with the first person, we have ana and nahnu, very simple. Ana means I, whether it's feminine, masculine, does not matter. We don't distinguish. And then we have no dual form for it, so there's no dual first person pronoun. So if I'm two people and I want to say we are going to the masjid, I'm going to say we, nahnu yani. I'm not going to say us two or somehow because it's not possible in the Arabic language. Plural, nahnu, we. So that in a brief sense, it covers all the detached pronouns. So inshallah, like again, this is the first part of the pronouns. So we covered all the detached pronouns. In the previous or the next video, sorry, we're going to cover al-muttasil, the attached pronouns and how they function, what they can be attached to, how they look like when they're attached to things, and the different meanings that they can have when they're attached to either ism or harf or fi'al. I hope this video had a benefit in it. Again, I do recommend someone would memorize this and rewrite this. You can find these slides in our PDF book called Understanding the Quran or Understanding Quranic Arabic. And you can find it, I think it's on page 34. Jazakallah khairan, and you can find that PDF on the playlist description. Jazakallah khairan for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.